U.S. less than halfway to upper limit of refugee cap as record numbers seek help. The U.S. is slow. At the halfway point of the U.S. government's fiscal year, President Donald Trump's administration has admitted fewer than half of the total number of it said it would, already the lowest cap in the refugee program's history. National security experts and refugee advocacy groups warn that the administration is still slow-walking the admissions process, which damages American credibility and leadership abroad. But hardliners have praised for all but eliminating the program. According to a review of the latest publicly available data, the U.S. has taken in 12,099 refugees since October 1. That's fewer than, at the current pace, the U.S. would admit around 25,000 by fiscal year's end, actually an increase from last year's processing of 22,491 refugees, the second lowest sum in the program's nearly 45-year history. But it pales in comparison to the average figure under previous administrations, both Republican and Democrat, which averaged 78,865. And while previous the spokesperson also downplayed the halfway point as a poor representation of whether the administration will reach 30,000, saying that admissions rarely. Globally, the number of refugees and displaced persons remained at historic highs in 2018. There were 68. Some countries hit hardest by the violence and turmoil, forcing people to flee, are among those from which the U.S. has admitted the fewest refugees. Since October, after his presidential campaign advocated for barring all refugees, Trump initially did so for 90 days in his first travel ban executive order that also blocked visas from 7 Muslim-majority countries. After legal battle, now, those restrictions are no longer in place, but all refugees undergo additional background processes that advocates have said are unnecessary and designed to waste time. That has international implications, some experts warn, as other countries mimic the U.S. and admit fewer refugees. Globally, but for many, including Syrians, Afghans, and the Rohingya refugees fleeing ethnic cleansing in Myanmar, ongoing conflicts in their home countries prevent a safe and voluntary return. As these vulnerable populations live for years in refugee camps, experts warn, they become more susceptible to radicalization, and any strain put on host countries to sustain them can spark violent backlash or destabilize regions. The Trump administration has been accused of working to dismantle the U.S. refugee admissions program, first by setting increasingly lower caps but more recently by proposing in its fiscal 2020 budget to strip the State Department's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, or PRM, of certain funds and authorities. America's Dewey was one of more than 50 former U.S. foreign policy officials who signed a letter to Congress urging it to block the move, as well as the budget proposal's cuts to humanitarian aid. The State Department, the Assistant Secretary for PRM position, has been vacant for the entirety of the Trump administration. Last May,
Raindrops, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.